Sabah everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're finally able to talk about the Pixel 6 and the 6 Pro. In this video I'm going to be focusing for you guys on the gaming capabilities with the Tensor processor, as well as the multimedia consumption and creation on the Pixel 6 Pro. I also want to mention that I'm actually doing a little bit of a collaboration with my buddy Juan Carlos Bagnell. He's going to be doing part 2 of this video where he's doing performance focused experience on the Tensor processor with the Pixel 6 Pro. So make sure to check out that video. I'll give you guys some information for that. But let's not waste any time. Let's talk about the Pixel 6 Pro. This is TK. Let's check it out. Like and subscribe and make sure you hit that bell icon so that you're always notified whenever we have new videos on the channel. So here we are, the Pixel 6 Pro. Keep in mind that there's a few similarities between it and the Pixel 6. So if you're thinking about picking up one of the two, just understand that they both are featuring the Tensor processor. The 6 has 8 gigs of RAM, the Pro has 12 gigs of RAM. The storage goes from 128 to 256 on the 6, and then 128 all the way to 512s on the Pro with UFS 3.1 storage. The battery capacity that we have here is a 5000 milliampere battery, and this is going to be charged with a 30-watt charger that's sold separately by Google, or 23-watt wireless charging. Now, I've been using the Spigen 45-watt PD charger, and I'll explain to you guys my experience with this one. And as far as the Pixel 6, it's basically a 4600 milliampere battery, slightly smaller, same 30-watt charging as far as the wired, and of course 20-watt charging when you go wireless. So both of them are going to have wireless charging, reverse wireless charging, and of course the camera array that we have in the back is slightly different between the two. The primary sensors, or at least the sensors that we have on the 6, is going to be the GN1 plus a 12 megapixel ultra wide with an 8 megapixel front facing camera. That's going to be a punch hole style camera. On the 6 Pro, we have the GN1 50 megapixel sensor as well, the 12 megapixel ultra wide, but then we also have the 48 megapixel telephoto that's also using a prism light. So the camera sensor is actually positioned sideways, and then the light comes in and then goes to it and actually be able to get better close-up shots. And we'll also talk about those a little bit. The front-facing camera is going to be an 11.1 megapixel sensor that's capable of giving us 4K 30 frames per second. Finally, 4K on the front-facing camera of a Pixel. Both of them are going to be IP68 and of course and running Android 12 out of the box, and that's one of the biggest differences. Also 6.7-inch QHD 120 Hz refresh rate as opposed to the 6.4-inch display on the 6 that runs at 90 Hz. In-display fingerprint sensor on both of them, and literally that's pretty much some of the differences there. The rest of the experience is pretty much very much the same. With the exception of the size of the display, you're really talking about the gaming experience that's going to work exactly on both of them. Today's video is going to be broken up in a few things, and I'll give you guys hopefully timestamps at the bottom. I do want to talk to you guys about gaming, so this is why the Kishi controller in there. We'll talk about how that works there. We're also going to talk about audio quality because we're talking about multimedia, so how do you consume audio on this device. There are stereo speakers. We'll also do some examples there. I also want to do a charging speed test for you guys using a 45-watt PD charger that we have in here. I do have the Pixel charger on order. Unfortunately, it's pre-order, not available yet. Once that charger comes in, I'll definitely do a video for you guys there. We're also going to talk about benchmarks. A lot of you guys were asking there. So the Saturday video gave me a lot of ideas. We have a lot to cover. Let's go ahead and dive into the Pixel 6 Pro and all of the goodness in there. Now, I know I mentioned to you guys gaming. Here is the list of games I have installed. I do also have the gaming controller app installed here. This is Kishi from Razer, and it works perfectly here with a little bit of a caveat, and I'll explain to you guys. And we have different type of games. We have first-person shooter, DB Legends, we have Gension Impact, Monument. It's more of a relaxing puzzle game. Need for Speed for racing, Thumper, basically a game for a little bit of rhythm games. Of course, we have PUBG Mobile, Dead Cells, and of course, Jet Sugar 2 and Modern Combat Versus work with Kishi, but they also work without it, as well as Need for Speed Most Wanted. So 3 games that work with the controller. So if we jump into Kishi, you'll be able to see it here, and I'll give it a second. So you notice right there, here's the compatible games that are installed, and you can of course find additional ones if you want to use the controller with other games. The overall experience that we're looking here is how does Tensor perform on for gaming experiences? How does it perform as well as also for content consumption? So first and foremost, I'll say this. I'm pretty much sure you guys want to hear exactly how the speakers work, so we're going to go ahead and jump into YouTube. And of course, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to play Alex Scrindo. This is one of my favorite songs on this. And one of you guys asked me on Saturday is, how does the speaker sound? So volume level all the way up, and we're going to jump all the way down to right before the drop at 53 seconds of the track. If you guys haven't checked it out, it's a non-copyrighted song, so let's go ahead and start.
Jack it up.
Sounds pretty good, actually very nice and very bassy. Not the loudest speaker that I hear on the market, but definitely sounds pretty good. Now, one thing to keep in mind also is what is the highest resolution video that you're able to play on this, since technically this is a QHD resolution at 120 frames per second. And then for that, I decided to basically jump in and try to find the highest quality video we can find on YouTube. So basically an 8K video. So 2160p is going to be the maximum resolution we're going to be able to select here, and of course pinch in, zoom out, and of course you can see here how beautiful the colors are on this display. It's just absolutely beautiful. The stereo speakers that we have in here, again, bottom right side, so if you're holding the phone straight up, it's going to be the bottom right. The bottom left is actually there for symmetry, and it has one of the other microphones. And of course we have the earpiece sitting at the top for the top experience, for a stereo experience here. There is a built-in EQ to the music application, but no other EQs, like no Dolby or anything like that, so just keep that in mind. Power volume rocker on the right side, SIM tray on the left side, where here we do have support here for one SIM tray and an eSIM if you guys like to use that. And of course we have material view throughout the system for customizations. You'll notice right there, if I press and hold, wallpapers, we're able to customize it, change it, and of course change the different colors. So the theming of the icons here, changing the grid, dark theme, and of course make it match the wallpaper that you're using. And you see here I'm using a very nice wallpaper of Super Saiyan God Blue and of course Super Saiyan, and it doesn't actually permeate straight to yellow here because I decided to choose more of the bluish tones of the picture itself in the options here. You can actually customize that straight into your settings and of course make it match whatever game that you're playing or whatever mood that you're in, and that's one of the main beauty here. I can go with a little bit with more yellow tones or more bluish purplish tones, and that's what I decided to do to match the wallpaper. And it'll work with your own wallpapers or even the ones that Google has built into this. And of course, watching content on this is going to be absolutely fantastic. So here, Demon Slayer, one of my favorite series that I like to watch, of course, looks absolutely perfect and works very nice. The main benefit here essentially is that you're going to be getting a massive 6.4-inch display and of course augmented with the 120 Hz refresh rate. So jumping into the settings tab under display, we're able to configure the brightness, the lock screen, the timeout, of course, the dark theme if you want to set this up, the display size if you want to be able to cover or not cover the punch hole camera, of course colors for adaptive night light if you want to basically get and blue filter set up at night, and I actually have it set up to work directly at 5 to 9 p.m. So right now, if you could turn it on automatically, otherwise it's on the schedule, you'll notice it'll turn on at 9 p.m. Now, as far as smooth display, automatically jump between 60 to 120 Hertz. So it is an adaptive refresh rate, meaning the device or the phone will customize the experience based on what you're watching. Right now, I'm not moving my display or I'm not moving anything around it. It's going to default down back to 60 frames per second and jump up to 120. And what I love about that is actually does a decent job of doing that. And of course, the increased touch sensitivity that we have at the bottom here in case we want to use a glass protector or even use it with gloves. So definitely very nice, very easy to customize. Sound experience is pretty much straightforward. You go in here, you can customize it. The media player, you can go in there and pin it. And as far as the vibration motor, it actually has a pretty decent vibration motor. It actually overall haven't missed any notification coming in from it. So the main experience would be here is actually a pretty decent motor that we have in here. So that's overall as far as how we can customize, of course, wallpapers and style, accessibility, security, all of the different things that you have in here before, digital well-being, system update. I did receive one update since I've received the phone, so just keep that in mind. Of course, you can log in with your Google account and connected devices. So one of the questions I received over the week is, does it have 5G and how is connectivity over 5G? So I did went ahead and tested it out. In my area, T-Mobile coverage is very, very nice. Now, as you can see here, I've had different experiences depending on where I was, but with the best signal that I was able to get, you'll notice right there, 14 ping, jitter is basically at 4 milliseconds, which is extremely low. 684, and between you and me, when I was downloading, it actually went over 700. So this is on basically mid-band 5G, not low-band, just the ones that we're normally able to see. And that's, again, a part of the merger between T-Mobile and Sprint, give us access to those bands, for T-Mobile users at least. So connection speed is going to be absolutely crazy fantastic depending on where you are, but you're still going to be able to get fast internet speed. Specifically on T-Mobile, this is the unlocked model, so it'll work with T-Mobile, AT&T, as well as Verizon. But connectivity is not going to be a problem, so gaming on the go is definitely going to be great. One of the other things, of course, we're going to talk about today is Geekbench, because we're going to talk about basically benchmarks. And from what you can see here, the score is 1039 single core, 2947 multi-core, and this is probably around the 870 or the Snapdragon 870 performance, very close to what the 888 can perform at around 1110, but not exactly at that same level. Still very nice, and again, shows the power of what Tensor can actually do for us. You can see definitely the different configurations here, the single core comparison, and of course the multi-core options as well. I know it doesn't necessarily stack exactly at the 888, but the overall performance everywhere in the UI elements are very, very nice, and that's one of the things you have to appreciate. Google did a lot of work to make sure that their system works on their chip as well as on their devices. So that's the experience that you're buying into here. It's exactly what it is. It's a Google experience on a device run and operated entirely by their design team. So now that we've talked about speed tests and benchmarks, let's start talking about basically how the applications, how are games running here. The games that I'm running here are a little bit basically spread across the board. We have first-person shooters, experience or open-world experiences, puzzle games, racing games, rhythm games, and of course back to first-person shooters, as I can pretty much just show that I like a lot of those games. I'll say one thing though, not every game ran exactly the way I was expecting it. And what I say by mean that Thumper for overall, even though it does run as a game, it starts up, and as soon as it goes to the main boot screen, it actually just crashes on its own. And that's one thing that I'm not sure why it keeps doing this. So I'll give it a second, and it went ahead and it goes and crashed. One thing I cannot control, unfortunately, is developer support. So I'm hoping in the near future, more developers will update their games to make sure that they work with the architecture that we have here on Tensor. The other thing I'll probably notice here is that new game center that we have here on the right. So if I click the little icon at the top, it gives us access to some of the new features that we have. First and foremost, the ability of live streaming our gaming experience straight from the phone over any network connection, be it 5G or even being on Wi-Fi. We have obviously the ability to optimizations here for Do Not Disturb. You can turn that on there. Frames per second, we can actually see the exact frames per second running on the game. Of course, we have a screen recorder that's built in, but also have a nice little shortcut for it. This is pretty much the exact same screen recorder if we went into the notification panel and turned it on from there. So no different there. And of course, last but not least, the ability of basically turning on screenshot options, so you can actually take screenshots and share them directly. All of these will automatically pop up whenever you're playing games, and that actually becomes very simple. Or you can go into the game setting directly within the settings tab and jump in and turn on the game dashboard. By default, this was not on, and the Do Not Disturb for games, this also was not on by default. Once you have that customized, you can go in there, and anytime you launch a game, it comes up by itself. Let's talk a little bit about content creation, and this is going to be some of the things that we want to cover as far as the cameras. The cameras that we have in here, again, the 50, the 12, as well as the 48 are all going to be on the back since this is the Pro. On the front, we have the 11.1 megapixel sensor that also gives us a little bit of an punched-in view or an ultra-wide. You can kind of see me right there. The experience that you're getting here, you have portrait, motion images, night photography. Of course, night sight is in there. Camera gives us the ability of using all the different sensors. And you notice when I jump into portrait, it does jump over specifically just to the primary sensor because it is using the secondary sensors for depth. Under video, we have a few options available here. We can go all the way to 4K 60 frames per second on the back sensors, as well as the ability of going all the way to 4K 30 frames per second on the front-facing camera. Absolutely great, really, really nice. And of course, speech enhancement here to be able to customize the audio, and of course, selfie illumination if you are going to be filming yourself in a slightly less dim, less lit environment. When you jump into the back, we have slow motion access, time-lapse are built in here, and of course, stabilization that you can customize between standard, locked, active, and of course cinematic pan. Those are some of the things we've seen in the past. Additional modes would be basically panorama, photosphere, and of course the lens. But let's go ahead and not waste too much time. Let me give you a front-facing sample and a back-facing sensor sample from the brand new Pixel 6 Pro. So I figured I'll do a little bit of a walk and talk with the front-facing camera. Now that we're able to shoot 4K 30 frames per second, finally the front-facing camera is getting some love. And of course, we're doing this is with the included microphones, no external audio setup. This is the front-facing camera on the Pixel 6 Pro. Switching it over to the primary sensor on the back, we're able to shoot 4K 60 frames per second as the maximum resolution. Now we can technically jump into the ultra-wide or even use some of the other lenses. But the main benefit here is that we can now shoot consistent video from the front and on the back at 4K 30 frames per second, stabilized here at least on the back. And again, we can shoot all the way up to 4K 60. A lot of improvements being done here in the camera system on the 6 Pro. Now, I'm pretty sure you guys want to know exactly how these perform on the device. I did actually get a chance to use this, and this is literally the smallest, one of the best options that I was able to get. It's a gang charger that supports a 45-watt PD charging with USB-C. And I was able to charge my device, and the device recognized it as fast charging. It says rapidly charging. But the thing about it is it literally took me almost 2 hours and 20 minutes to charge this from 1% all the way to 100%. So unfortunately, the charging on this is very slow, but again, keep in mind, this is not the intended charger to work with this. Google does sell the intended charger that runs at 30 watt, and I couldn't tell from the description on the video, on the listing on the website, if it was a PD charger or not. But once we receive that, I'll be able to test that out and see if it is much faster than what we're getting right now. Now, jumping into the settings section, you're able to see the battery usage. And just for reference, this is my battery session or battery usage for my last full charge on this. And it ran actually almost pretty good, 7 hours and 11 minutes as far as basically just the overall screen on time. I know a lot of us like to know exactly how much that goes. But keep in mind, this is just not a typical situation, but it was a lot of me testing, watching videos, and enjoying content on here. Now, the adaptive preferences is where I really wanted to show you guys is the ability of using adaptive charging and of course adaptive battery. The adaptive battery helps us have a longer battery life, but adaptive charging helps us so it actually allows the device not to overcharge, or meaning not to stay charged at 100% all the time. And also, if you have an alarm setup, as you can see here from the note, it would actually set the alarm, use the alarm as the endpoint of having it hit 100% overnight. So if you leave your phone on the charger, like some people like to do, this is definitely going to work very nicely for you. It's directly under the battery section, under adaptive preferences, and it will help you to run. And of course, this will be where you can actually turn on battery share if you want to share your battery, or the percentage to show that at the top. Let's switch over to, at the beginning I showed you guys how the sound is from the speakers, but let's say you want to listen to music on the phone, specifically the way you want to enjoy them. So for that, I actually did test it out with the Pixel Buds A, of course, as well as the Liberty 3 Pros that just got announced. And the reason why I want to show you guys here is I want to show you guys what the maximum, or what's the best experience you're able to get on the Pixel 6 Pro or the Pixel 6 right now. So I've already paired these guys, I don't have to worry about them. And of course, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to jump in all the way to the settings tab, and we're going to go down to the developer options. And the reason behind that is, as you can see here right now, we're able to support LDAC as far as the audio codec. We'll see here that there's also an area for aptX HD audio and aptX audio, AAC, SBC, and of course the system setting. But these support LDAC, so it means they're going to go all the way to 96 kilohertz and at 32-bit. Now, 96 kilohertz is the maximum we can get here, and then 32-bit is also going to be the maximum quality that we can get. Stereo, since we're using it, that goes without saying, and of course it is using LDAC. So if you're looking to get some of the best paired buds that you can get on the market right now, the Pixel Buds Series A here that are going to be really nice for about $100, and then of course you can get the Liberty 3 Pros for higher audio premium experience at about $160 or $170, $169 I think is what it's selling for right now. So overall experience is going to be very nice, especially for audio codecs. Unfortunately, what I would probably say is these are not going to be the best solution when you're listening or playing games that are first-person shooters. I recommend you buying an adapter or USB-C earbuds, as those are going to be the best options for you for the least amount of latency, as far as no latency issues. It does not have any gaming options for audio codecs yet. Now that we've covered charging and audio experience, let's go ahead and jump over and start talking about the gaming experience here. The Gension controller works perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. The only concern I would probably say is it doesn't fit the 100%, and that's not because of the bottom section. As you can see here, it fits perfectly, and it actually is large enough to conform to the phone. It actually almost meets the extended side, but you'll notice that it actually kind of leaves it a little bit sidewise, and that's mostly because of the little lip that we have here that goes against the camera bump on the top, and that's mostly present on the top piece, not on the bottom one. So you're able to basically play. It doesn't really disturb or determine or change the experience. You're still able to basically scroll through. Everything works perfectly fine because the interface is actually connected on the right side, not on the left side. And of course, there's a bottom opening here for the audio to come out. But my recommendation would be more of a gaming controller that uses a mount as opposed to key just for the best fit. It's not going to damage our phone, but it definitely is something to keep in mind that it doesn't actually fit 100%. But as far as the gaming experience, let's go ahead and start talking some numbers, because I'm pretty sure you guys want to know how do they perform on our device. What we have in front of us essentially is some of the statistics I was able to get straight off the phone, and how do they perform on our Pixel 6 Pro. To start off, Call of Duty Mobile played consistently at 60 frames per second, and I think that's mostly developer support. I know it can play at 90 and even at 120 on certain Xperia smartphones, but at this point it's 60 frames per second. It plays very smoothly, and the consistency is actually pretty good. Dead Cells played very nice, amazingly well at 120 frames per second, and I think some of the experiences that we got there essentially is just that the frame rate and the gaming, everything stayed really nice and very good. Overall, the experience did fluctuate a little bit, mostly because of when I was playing and jumping between the cutscenes, and that was the refresh rate that changed overall there. Death Trigger 2 played very nicely at about 111, although I will say that whenever I did turn on the recording to be able to capture some of the content that I'm showing you guys right now, it did actually fluctuate a little bit down, but I think that's due to the recorder. Whenever you turn on screen recording on any device, sometimes that actually impacts the frame rate because the recorder is limiting the display capability of jumping higher than a certain. Modern Combat Versus played beautifully, 30 frames per second, unfortunately nothing higher than that, and it works great with the controller, as I mentioned to you guys before. Monument Valley, 60 frames per second locked, consistent, and beautiful, and of course the speakers on this just absolutely sound great. A pair of buds, even if they're wireless, will work really nice for you guys, since the audio here doesn't necessarily need to sync with the action that we're looking at. Need for Speed Most Wanted is the next game that I enjoyed heavily. It is one of my favorite, and I've had this for quite some time, and one of my favorite purchases over time. 120 frames per second, consistently beautiful. Everything worked great without missing a beat. PUBG Mobile actually played pretty nicely. I was able to play it at 40 frames per second, and of course the highest frame per second I was able to get was 60, but it was consistent, and the gaming on this was actually very, very nice. Thumper and Gension Impact gave me some problems. As I showed you guys at the beginning, Thumper does just not want to work. It crashed, and it basically every time I start it up, it does crash. Now the game system here did recognize it at 74 frames per second, but that's purely because of the loading part, so I would not necessarily trust that information. If you're looking to play Genshin Impact specifically or Thumper, the experience it will need a little bit more time for it to get better. But all of the other games that I shared with you guys, PUBG Mobile, Call of Duty Mobile, Need for Speed Most Wanted, all of those games ran absolutely fantastic. There's no question. The system can handle it, and then even some. 12 gigs of RAM on here is obviously way more than what we need, and everything works beautifully here. So that kind of covers the gaming experience we're talking there. As far as camera experience, the only thing I can probably just say to you guys is that it's just no way for this to actually mess up. Pictures on this were absolutely vibrant, amazing. The ability of having 4K on the front-facing camera was also a nice little addition there that they did for us. They really upped the experience on the Pro more than what we've seen in the past. And this is one of the things that you start noticing in the little details that they're doing there. Between the translation, the transcribing functionality that they added in there, on-machine, on-device processing of the Google Assistant task, even voice-to-text, and even translation. I really love the fact some of the people that were asking me questions on the Pixel 6 Pro over the weekend were submitting them to me in Arabic on Twitter. And I loved, as I'm showing you guys with the example right now, I was able to jump back in there using the translation function in the Google keyboard, in Gboard here. And then as I'm typing in English, it translates into Arabic, puts the text where it needs to be, and I hit send without missing a beat. So there's a lot of really cool things in there that I appreciated, especially with the new optimizations that were done. The cameras, as you saw probably already, they're really, really good. There's really very few things that I would probably say that this system cannot do. Tensor really functions amazingly on Google devices, and it really augments the experience that you want to get from Google devices. It's still a brand new processor. It still needs a little bit more tuning, and that's why I'm thinking some of the games were not working 100%. Genshin Impact and Thumper, unfortunately, were not running the way I wanted them. Now, of course, the cameras are going to be some of the best experiences here on the device, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to focus on content creation. The ability of streaming from my phone straight to the YouTube side, be able to basically play games and have everybody watch the game with me is actually a very nice addition, and it works really good over Wi-Fi or even 5G. As you saw, 5G connectivity here is very fast. The cameras on here are not going to disappoint. Still photography is going to be amazing. I'm going to focus a little bit differently. I'm going to put another video later on specifically talking about the cameras and how I've been using them for the last week or less than a week. So for today's video, I hope you guys enjoyed the gaming performance and content creation capabilities of the Pixel 6 Pro. Make sure to check out Juan Carlos's video if you're looking for performance testing and how this actually production is going to be running on a Pixel 6 Pro or a Pixel 6 running the Tensor processor. Hopefully you found this video helpful, so please make sure to let me know in the comments below what else you would like me to cover or focus on in my next video on the Pixel 6 Pro experience that we're going on together. This is TK. I'll see you in the next video.